Donald Trump is taking over DC in the interest of making this a safer and better place, right? Who's going to argue with that? Well, the media. The media apparently doesn't care about the fact that, well, the nation's capital is looking at a homicide rate that is 41 per 100,000. I mean, that's awful. It's more, we talked about this yesterday, it's more than Mexico City, which blows me away because actually, you know my colleague over at 76 Research, 76research.com, market's on fire again today. We'll talk about that in a little bit because I want you to be investing. 76research.com is my company that I have there. My colleague, Rob, was down in Mexico City recently, and I was like, oh my gosh, be careful, be careful, be careful. Well, I should have told him that when he went to DC, right? Because look at that, 41 per 100,000 versus Mexico City, just 8 per 100,000. I mean, that just blows me away. Lima, Peru, 7 per 100,000. I mean, you are way better off in Nairobi than you are in Washington, D.C. So Donald Trump wants to change this. And the New York Times is flipping out. The New York Times is like, no, it's not that bad. Look at this. Look at this. Okay, this is in today's paper. In many American cities, the rate of violent crime rose sharply during the coronavirus pandemic and fell in the years afterwards, now returning to pre-COVID levels. Washington's crime spike lasted longer than that of many cities, but over the past 18 months, violent crime, they write, there has fallen considerably. It's like they're trying to give them a pass. They're like, okay, it went a little bit longer, but it's getting better. It's getting better. The murder rate has declined to 2019 levels. Oh, like that was really good, right? 2019 was still horrific. Okay, it's been horrific for years. In fact, I'll tell you, it's been so horrific for years that you can even think about, Joe Biden back in, this is 1992. Wait till you see this one that I found. Okay, Joe Biden, 1992, on the floor talking about how he goes out of his way to make sure that he doesn't get carjacked. Yeah. In DC. So don't tell me New York Times, like this is something, Johnny come lately, and let's go back to the levels of what? 2019. I mean, you've had a problem there for decades in DC, and finally someone's coming along and trying to fix it. And I mean, what do they say? Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. And yet, what do? They look a gift horse in the mouth. Of course, here's Joe Biden.
Driving home, my staff who lives here in the Hill reminded me, don't stop at a stoplight until I'm out of town. If I see a red light late at night, since there's very little traffic, slow up at the other block so I never come to a full stop except in the middle of the block because of carjackings. Stopping at a light.
Yeah, because of carjackings. So he was like speeding through lights, right? His staff told him to do it. He had an excuse because DC was that dangerous. That was back in 1992. I gotta tell you, like this is crazy. And yet the New York Times is trying to make excuses. It's as though they're like, well, hey, we're back at 2019 levels. Whoop-de-doo. They said this is not the city that the president described on Monday, one of crime, bloodshed, bedlam, and squalor that was in need of liberation. Well, hey guys, I'm sorry, he kind of outsmarted you on this one now, didn't he? Because it turns out that legally speaking, the president has every right to be able to go in and take hold in an emergency situation of the DC police force, right? Because it's not a state, doesn't really belong to anyone. So the president does have jurisdiction there. And he's saying, it's that bad. We have to do something. And the media just keeps losing it. It's like the little boy who cried wolf. Again, don't look a gift horse in the mouth, for goodness sakes. I want to show you what the president said right here as he spoke about the disaster that is D.C.
Driving home, my staff who lives here in the Hills.
That's the wrong one. Good thing he's not there anymore, right? It's amazing. He actually was kind of with it, kind of, back in 1992. Here we go.
This issue directly impacts the functioning of the federal government and is a threat to America, really. It's a threat to our country. We have other cities also that are bad, very bad. You look at Chicago, how bad it is. You look at Los Angeles, how bad it is. We have other cities that are very bad. New York has a problem. And then you have, of course, Baltimore and Oakland. We don't even mention that anymore. They're so far gone. We're not going to let it happen. We're not going to lose our cities over this. And this will go further. We're starting very strongly with D.C., and we're going to clean it up real quick, very quickly, as they say. You'll have more police, and you'll be so happy because you'll be safe. When you walk down the street, you're going to see police, or you're going to see FBI agents. We're going to have a lot of agents on the street. You're going to have a lot of essentially military, and we will bring in the military if it's needed, by the way.
No.
All right, you heard that, right? So again, part of the media outrage. This next clip I'm going to show you, this reminds me of when Joe Scarborough was like, best Biden ever, because sitting there, he's looking you straight in the face, and he gets himself into like a little bit of a conundrum because he's like, oh, DC. And he can't like ignore the fact that DC is dangerous, okay? I'm sorry, like it just is dangerous. So is New York City for that matter. All right, so he starts to like go down this path and he's like, well, so he's struggling on DC, and then he flips around to New York and he's like, oh, but it's so safe now. And I'm like, really? Oh, clearly you moved to Florida or something, right? I heard you're doing the show live out of Florida there. Good for you. Home studio out of Florida, save on the tax. Maybe it's a little safer than the likes of New York City. Anyway, watch this. It's classic. And just remember, best Biden ever. What a liar.
Don't bring in the military. Willie, what's interesting about this list, first of all, I don't know what problems he has in New York City. Again, crime in that city and quality of life in that city, though after COVID went down, I mean, my God, I think New York City is safer now than it's been in like 55 years, 60 years. I mean, the stats are just off the charts. And throughout most of New York, people just don't feel the menace that you feel not only in Washington, D.C., which, by the way, Washington, D.C. is a special case. It's the nation's capital. And again, my beef going back to my days in Congress always was, well, why isn't Congress doing more? I mean, they're really letting the nation's capital be guided by the lunacy of Marion Barry and some people on the city council that have some crazy ideas about, stopping the police from doing their jobs. But it's the nation's capital. So I think Congress and the president should have stepped in 30 years ago. But the president left some cities off the list.
Okay, you see what I said? Like, he's kind of just talking himself around in circles here. He's like, I don't know how to quite criticize him on this because DC is kind of bad and it is the nation's capital. But.
Of course, red state cities that actually some of the most dangerous cities in America, whether you're talking about Memphis, Tennessee, Birmingham, Alabama, or a lot of other cities in red states that are per person just as dangerous or actually more dangerous than Washington, D.C.
I'm just looking at your comments, you guys. Piece of my mind. By the way, thanks for reaching out on Twitter. Right, so that's why everyone is moving to New York City. Not. And then let's see. We've got a few more of them here. I'm just dying. You guys are like, yeah, why crime is down is because look at this. Greg Prince, and you're right. George Soros's judges, they're not prosecuting. I mean, I spoke with a nurse actually in DC who told me an interesting story. She is married to a cop, and she said like they're not being allowed in New York City to actually move forward on crime because they're trying to keep the numbers so low. So think about that for a second, okay? So it's all about optics and not about like, how it really is. So again, remember, as everyone tries to tell you, like the New York Times, oh, it's safe, it's safe. These are the numbers. That doesn't look very safe to me, okay? And you know who else it doesn't look safe to? This doesn't look very safe to a member of the media establishment, a reporter, actually not a New York reporter, a DC reporter actually spoke out about all this, right? She's looking at these crime numbers, but not only is she looking at the crime numbers, she's feeling these crime numbers. I mean, she works in Washington, D.C., and the ABC News Bureau has been hit with a wave of crime in the nearby area. So all of a sudden she goes off script, and in the middle of this interview, she just starts ranting about how bad the crime is. And I'm sure everybody at ABC is like, wait, what? No, you're not supposed to say that, right? You're supposed to like massage this or like walk some kind of line somehow, some way, because, we have our side and we're sticking to it. Well, she just went rogue, and I want you to see this. This is the ABC reporter talking with some others about her own experience. And gosh darn it, nobody should have to deal with this. No one.
We've been talking so much about the numbers, and yeah, usually that's how you play devil's advocate, is you talk about, oh, well, stats say crime is down. However, I can tell you firsthand here in downtown D.C. where we work, right here around our bureau, just in the past 6 months, there were 2 people shot. One person died, literally 2 blocks down here from the bureau. It was within the last 2 years that I actually was jumped walking just 2 blocks down from here. And then just this morning, one of my coworkers said her car was stolen a block away from the bureau. So we can talk about the numbers going down, but crime is happening every single day because we're all experiencing it firsthand while working and living down here.
So this gets back to what one of you guys was just saying. In other words, you have a lot of people in place, and what I anecdotally am telling you about, the woman I met who's a nurse married to a cop, and they can't actually, do their jobs. Like, there's this effort to make it look better, but they're not actually making it safer. They're not actually making it better. And this poor woman, as she said, she was jumped in DC. Her colleague that day had her car stolen. I mean, this is not okay, right? This is in like a downtown area. And this, for goodness sakes, is our nation's capital. Not that it should matter. I mean, you should be safe wherever. And so Trump has taken this on. And you know what? This is one that he can take on. And they don't have the legal might to fight back on this. And so I'm kind of wondering if the mayor realizes that, because back in 1974, they wrote this into the code that in case of emergency, the president would be in charge of the DC police. And he said, this is yesterday, DC is going to be liberated today. All the crime and filth and savagery and scum, they're going to disappear. I'm going to make our capital great again. We're not going to tolerate this, because you have innocent people, right, that need to be able to live and go about their business. And what has happened is truly, truly, truly awful. There's no reason that people should be living in an area that is filled with so much crime. And he made it really clear. Let me show you this excerpt that caused a little bit of a stir. Because, he's not being politically correct about it. It's not time to be politically correct about this stuff. Here we go.
And we're getting rid of the slums, too. We have slums here. We're getting rid of them. I know it's not politically correct. You'll say, oh, so terrible. No, we're getting rid of the slums where they live.
So he's saying he doesn't want the squalor. He doesn't want the slums. He doesn't want the crime. And the media is like, no, we want all that. It reminds me of when I first moved to San Francisco, which I called Sucks Francisco a lot of years ago. My husband and I moved out there. Thank you, Thomas Conservative. I appreciate it. I would just say that Sucks Francisco was named that very, very quickly by me, because I actually didn't feel safe. And that was a lot of years ago. You try going there now. And I didn't feel safe. And we lived in a safe area, Nob Hill. But if you went down the hill, you're up on the hill, right? If you went down the hill, just even halfway down the hill, I mean, there were all kinds of things. We're in polite company. I'm not going to talk about it, but let's just suffice it to say it was a really aggressive community. And they also had a lot of homelessness there. And I was sort of stunned by it, because I had come from New York City, and don't forget, there had been a lot of cleanup. Thank you, Rudy Giuliani, that had gone on in New York City. And I went to San Francisco. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. This homelessness is out of control. And again, we're going back 20 years, guys. I mean, this is a long time ago. And it was that bad then. And at the time, Gavin Newsom was married to Kimberly Guilfoyle, and he was running for mayor. And he had a proposal to get the homeless off the streets. And he was going to require that instead of going in and getting cash from the government, every week they literally handed out cash. He would require them to actually be in housing where they would have treatment programs. And, he couldn't get this through. It's like the whole darn place just loved the fact that they had all the homelessness there. They saw it as part of their charm. I'm like, I'm sorry, this is not charming. This is uncomfortable. This is dangerous. And it wasn't just the homelessness. It was a lot of other things as well. So listen, DC deserves this. And for the media to sit there and try and pretend like it's not, it's not crime-ridden, it's not a bad place, that is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it really is ridiculous. And there's no reason for that. I mean, as I said, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Jonathan Mason writing that DC youth have no job opportunities. Maybe if they created trade schools, right? And they developed some jobs for kids outside of DC. That's a good idea. There's a whole lot of things that could be done. But for whatever reason, the Democrats haven't been willing to do any of it. They just they dig in their heels. And right now it's just ABT, anything but Trump. And so as a result of this, he's out there trying to fix things and they don't want any part of it. You think about the mayor. I give her credit because she was asked about this, of course, on MSNBC, where they're like foaming at the mouth. They're blaming racism. Of course, when in doubt, go back to that. Go back to the well. They're trying to say that he's racist against young black kids. It's, I'm sorry. You want to offer a better opportunity, and that means making sure that those kids on the streets anywhere have safety, so that there are alternatives, that they can go to school, that they can go to work. Look at this. The mayor of DC, she's like, okay, you know what? I realize it's popular rhetoric on the campaign trail, but the reality is we need the help. I give her credit for this.
One of the things that we have seen over and over from the president, from his team, Stephen Miller saying it's like Baghdad in Ethiopia. They seem to hold their harshest criticism sometimes for cities that are majority black and brown. Do you see that, and what do you think that means?
I think that I have been dealing with this issue for a number of years. It's kind of easy fodder on the campaign trail. But now we're talking about governing, and my job is to focus on making sure our city is running well, and people enjoy a great quality of life. And I think we're doing a really good job. We do need the federal government's help, as I mentioned, because they have an outsized influence on our criminal justice system. We need more prosecutors. We need more judges. There are other ways to help. Even we want to rebuild our jail, and there are ways that the feds can help with that. But also just doing their part, cutting the grass, fixing the fountains, making sure that federal law enforcement is doing all of the policing that they can do. And I just have to say thank you to MPS, FBI, ATF, who've always worked cooperatively with us, and we expect that they will again.
Okay. You know what? Good for her. She's actually welcoming the help. She's like, okay, you want to help? I'll take it. We need the help. And she's right. They do need the help. And yet, again, I'm looking at NPR, guys. NPR, they are just unbelievable. I'm so sick of it. And they're just bitter, because they lost all their extra funding from the State Department, right? Let's take a look at this right here. I was reading their piece today. They're trying to say that this is somehow racist, that Trump's primary targets are those he describes as criminals. In this case, often teenagers, many of them black. Washington has struggled, they write, at times with violence caused by young. This is so funny. At times Washington has struggled, at times with young men who sometimes ride motorcycles and four-wheelers. Trump spoke about them at length Monday. The city's Metro Police Chief, Pamela Smith, was asked about the issue in a separate Monday press conference, and she said, quote, "We want young people to be safe in our city. We want them to be able to enjoy the activities of our city, but," now this is interesting, this is the police chief, she said, "we're not going to tolerate the kind of criminal activity that we've seen in the past." Okay, now you have both the mayor, a black woman, and the head of the police, also a black woman, saying, yeah, we're going to crack down. I don't know where you guys were in the past. Suddenly now you're not going to tolerate it. Good. I don't know why you tolerated it earlier, but better late than never, I guess. Maybe you're figuring out you got to play ball here with the new president of the United States who means business. But think about this. Who is in charge, right, of the DC police? Who is in charge? Well, we got a funny shot going on. There we go. I think that was my phone. Who's in charge of the DC police? It's a woman who actually has a rather interesting background. Very interesting background. This is Pamela Smith, ladies and gentlemen, and she's not exactly who you would think of for a job like this, only because her background doesn't quite match up to be, it has nothing to do with her being a woman, nothing to do with her ethnicity, and everything to do with, she really hasn't worked as a, dare I say, real police officer, because I don't think, working in the canine department, training dogs or training drivers, or actually being the DEI chief. Like, I just don't think that really, or park ranger. Like, I mean, look, I'm just a layperson here, right? I don't have any real police experience, but it doesn't seem to me that is a qualification for becoming head of the police. So here's a little bit about her, courtesy of Wiki. Take it with a grain of salt because it's Wikipedia, but it says that she became head of the police department after first serving as its chief equity officer. So she went in as the chief equity officer in 2023. Woohoo! Like, that's a real compelling job, right? And then got promoted by the mayor to run the police force. Here's a little bit more about her. Pamela, after college, moved to New York, where she worked as a seasonal park ranger at the Gateway National Recreation Center. Again, like Parks and Rec. Like, that's not exactly DC police material, shall I say. And she was a social worker. Oh my goodness, she's just checking all the boxes, right? But none that would actually qualify you for being head of police in DC. She was a social worker out on Staten Island. Great. She worked in the foster care system. Apparently, she had been a product of foster care at one point, so she's giving back to her community. Great. Okay, again, doesn't qualify you for being head of the police force there in Washington, D.C. And then we've got more on her. Okay, look at this. She worked again as the United States Park Police in 1998 as a patrol officer in the San Francisco field office. But is she still like parks when she's in San Francisco? I'd like to clarify that. And then she got the big gig. She got to train the cute little German shepherds, right? The canine unit. I mean, really? Okay, so she became the canine unit handler, and then went on to help law enforcement driver training in a program in Georgia. So again, I'm just looking at this, and I don't know how on earth, except that we had a sudden push in society with the wokeness and the DEI, and suddenly this woman gets promoted to run the DC police. I mean, that's a big, big jump, right? From the canine trainer and the driver teacher and the park ranger to this. So here's where it all came together. In May 2022, she became the chief equity officer assigned to the executive office of the chief of police in DC, and she led the department's efforts on diversity, equity, and inclusion. She was really focused on DEI. She supervised the whole DEI operation, and in the interim, I guess now the numbers are a little bit better, but don't forget, you're not allowed to arrest, certain people if they're a certain demographic, because you don't want that on the record, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You have a whole lot of things going on, a lot of layers that have nothing to do with actually keeping a city safe. And this woman is running the whole shebang, and she has really, in my estimation, no qualification to be doing so. She's kind of this DEI queen. So why is she there? Well, I think we know why she's there, right? She has to be there because, she checks all the boxes, and they put her there. And these days are over. I mean, I would just say, Harvard had to learn it from the Supreme Court. Disney's having to learn it from the FCC head, Brandon Carr. You're actually violating the law if you're picking someone just because of their race, their ethnicity, their gender. You can't do that. It's like best man or woman, period, for the job. Okay, that's who we are as a nation. We're a meritocracy. You guys might not like it, but here's the reality. Well, I know you like it, but some other people out there, they don't like this because they want, what they call equal outcomes. They don't want equal opportunities. They want equal outcomes because they're all a bunch of socialists that frankly need to go and live in a socialist country where they'd be much happier, right? Go to Venezuela. Be my guest, for goodness sakes.